The reality that we now have is this. We are walking into a mountain of debt, and it's a debt that if the Labor Party had their way, they'd actually make even bigger. And that means that we're going to have a reality check on exactly how, not we get into it, but how we're going to get out of it. And getting out of it, one thing I don't hear anyway, it means you're going to have some very honest conversations about where you spend money and where you invest money and where you intend to get a return. So the future is be one of debt, threats from overseas that are becoming paramount, and we're seeing more of it, especially from China. Growth that we must have, exponential growth to try and bring our economic circumstances back into something that's manageable. And returns, that where the government invests, it has to get a return. Now, it's an unfortunate reality that if you just skid through on an arts degree, the reality is you probably would have been better doing a trade. You probably would have been better becoming an electrician or a carpenter. I'm an accountant. I did the books for both, and I can tell you which ones make more money. Basically, people who are competent in the trades make substantially more money than people who have a matter-of-fact degree, especially around arts degrees. So this is the reality that we have to deal with. And if we didn't have the debt that was started right back when the issues surrounding the GFC, the stimulus package, I might note for this House, I didn't vote for any of them, not one of them, then we could probably have a more generous capacity in a whole range of degrees. But if we are going to invest, we must invest in where the future lies, and the future is going to lie in the STEM degrees. Even last night, Mr Deputy Speaker, we hear about the new avenue that's opening up before us, which is basically how affordable is going to be to launch a satellite. We're seeing private companies coming into this space, whether it's Virgin or whether it's Elon Musk, basically having the capacity now to take that part of that new frontier that was once the domain of the Soviets and China, and NASA. Well, now it's coming to private enterprise. And one of the fastest growing sectors, Mr Deputy Speaker, one of the fastest growing sectors in that area is Australia. Australia has great capacity, but for that, they need the people with the skill sets. And on the back of that is things such as, which is another issue I always had, was the NBN and what happens when you invest in a technology. You can invest in water or dams, there's no replacement for that. But you want to invest in technologies, be careful because they become out of date. Now what they're talking about with the investment in the new technology is broadband speeds from satellite at terabytes per second, which of course means the NBN will be out of date, obsolete, and you can book it as an impairment on your nation's books, and about an $80–90 billion impairment. Now, once more, to be in that space, you're going to need people in the sciences. You're going to need people in those degrees that are at the cutting edge. As far as we go in the future of this nation, one of the great strategic advantages we have, Mr Deputy Speaker, is in agriculture. But you are not going to survive in agriculture unless you're at the very top. If you think you're going to just be in agriculture, then you'll just be in agriculture with Somalia and Kenya, with Mongolia, with a whole heap of other countries that are just in agriculture as well. But if you want to actually make the premium for our nation, then you have to be at the very top. And to be at the very top means you have to have the skill sets, whether it's in such things as genetics, which is in such things as nutrition, which is in such things as pastures. These skill sets are absolutely essential. And we can look back through the history of why we are sustained as we are at the moment, why we can sustain a population between 7 and 8 billion people is because of the investment we made in the so-called green revolution, the utilisation of fertilisers and other agricultural inputs. That's the only reason why we have a capacity to feed the population as it is now. Now, we've eaten that up, and as we go onto a population towards 10 billion people, we're going to have to make that next quantum leap. And where's this skill set going to have to come from? Well, just being a reality, it's not going to come from the arts faculty. It's going to come from people in the sciences. It's going to come from the people who have those skill sets. The satellites will come from people, not from the arts, from the arts faculty, but from people who've got the skill sets in physics and chemistry and mathematics. The telecommunications of the future will not come from the arts faculty. It's going to come from the people who have those skill sets. We're dealing right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and people are in a race. We know the first person to develop the vaccine will own half of Babylon, richest person in Babylon. And they're lined up. We've got Oxford University, and I note some of the concerns ahead with the source material of that, and I always have to say my own position. I don't agree with the use of other material from an aborted person to be utilised as a base material for the development of vaccines. I have to say that because it's my philosophical belief, but moving on. But we've also got the Chinese who are moving forward in that space, racing forward. We've got the Americans racing forward, and we've also got the University of Queensland racing forward. It looks like at this stage that Oxford's at the front of the pack. But where are those skill sets coming from? Where are those people coming from? They're coming from the science faculties. And as marvellous as it is, there is nothing better. I love having a conversation with a person of letters. It's, I've written a book myself. Not that I profess to be, a person of great literary merit, but of course it's an incredibly beautiful thing. But we have to deal with the reality of the world we're about to walk into. Soon, our debt in the coming years will pass $1 trillion. And it's just a word. It doesn't stop there. It keeps marching forward. And we're going to be giving to our children and our grandchildren, because we're never going to repay it, we're just going to be leaving this debt for them. We're going to be giving them the task of trying to manage it. And so we have to provide the nation that has that task with the skill sets to do it. And the people with the skill sets to do it, as much as we'd love them to come from their knowledge of Shakespeare, it's probably going to become more of their knowledge of chemistry and physics and mathematics and biochemistry and biomaths and these areas. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm not saying for 1 second there is not merit and virtue in any degree. If we had our choice, if we hadn't, way back before 2010, started spending money and putting it on the credit card like there was no tomorrow, then we wouldn't have to make decisions about this one or that one. But we do. We do, and those decisions and that corner that we're in is going to become more pronounced, whether we're the government or the Labor Party and their associates of the government. It won't matter. The Expenditure Review Committee will follow the same pattern, the same discussion, and it'll be about this, savings. Or more to the point, you don't have to worry about spending because there ain't no money there. There is no money to spend. And so part of the process of this, and I'm trying to be as honest as that as chair of the committee, is to say there will be, of course, we talked about near $4 million degrees that the previous member was remotely was telling us about. There's no arguments about that, but we've got to make sure that we focus that investment by this nation, because overwhelmingly university degrees are paid for by the taxpayer, not paid for by the student. And I've got 4 kids who go to university, but they're paid for by the taxpayer. And they'll be paid for by the taxpayer in the future. And the other question you've got to ask yourself is this. So the person who's out in the building site as a labourer, the person who's in the shed as a shearer, the person who's on the road as a plant operator, the person who's on the farm and never went to university, they're the people who are actually paying for the university degrees that other people are getting, those people. And you've got to ask what's fair for them. It's not just a position seen through one set of eyes. There's the beneficiary of it, but there's also the benefactor. And the benefactor is the taxpayer. And in many instances, the taxpayer never went to university. So they also have a right to be heard in this debate, and they also have their requirements that need to be addressed. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've got to go give another speech in the Federation Chamber. I thank you for allowing me into the surreal surrounds of the chamber.
I thank the Honourable